My name is Peter Ludman. I'm the National Audit Lead for Percutaneous Coronary Intervention. I've been closely involved with NICOR in the development of data analysis tools and the quality improvement packs. And these are two sort of rather separate subjects which I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to start by looking at the data tools. So how do you analyze the data that you've uploaded to the NICOR servers? When you put data in at the top left of this slide, it sits in a live data environment with a variety of structures around it, QReg5 and Mongo database. And we take extracts from that live data. We link it with the Office of National Statistics for survival analysis. We anonymize it. It goes through analytical processes, and it generates a variety of outputs, including the outlier process, the PCI slide decks, and the benchmarking and quality improvement programs from NICOR. However, you're uploading these data and you need to be able to see what it is you've uploaded. And what I'm going to show you is how you can see the live data itself, and specifically how you could focus on both the data quality and analysis. So to start in, I'm afraid there's currently a two-stage login process, which I'm going to show you. So here we are at the main NICOR web portal, and the first thing you do is click on login on this corner here. And when you do that, you're brought to the first of the two login screens. You put in your username and password, and on this screen actually you don't need your hospital and /NICOR after it. Your name is enough. And this brings you to the next level of login, and you'll see at the bottom there is the NCAP web applications, and that's what you've next got to click. When you do that and you go past the disclaimer, you end up with the NCAP login. This time you do need the your hospital code /NICOR after your name, and then it's the same password as you've used before. This takes you to the first screen, and you'll see here that I'm logged in as myself at my hospital, the Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Birmingham, Edgbaston, and according to which domains you have access to, the drop-down list will show them. And you can see I've highlighted there percutaneous coronary intervention, or PCI. I'll now show you two aspects of the live data: data quality and analysis. And let's first focus on the data quality, and initially the timeliness and then the completeness of the data. So when you first log in, the first thing you will see on the right hand side with the green lines is a snapshot of your level of compliance. And basically what we're looking at is how quickly after a procedure has been performed have you uploaded that information into NICOR. If you did the procedure within the last week and uploaded it, that's good. If the procedures you're uploading are from several months ago, that means the data in NICOR are not as contemporaneous as we'd like them to be. If I just focus on that, you can see that, for example, in the last 7 days when this was done, I'd uploaded all 22 of the 22 procedures done in that last 7 days, and I get a tick, 100%, and a green line underneath that set of words. It goes red if you fail to do it. We're trying to encourage people to upload data as contemporaneously as possible. Certainly I try and do it every week or two, and we certainly want it to be done within every 3 months. Now, the other way you can look at the data is you can pick the tab on the top right called Data Submission Timeliness, and this gives you a more in-detail analysis of the upload. There are 4 possible analytical tools, but the first 3 are used by the NICOR project managers, and I'm not going to discuss those today. The lower one is, which says Show Hospital Detailed Report, is for the PCI centres. This is available to you, and this is what I'm going to briefly describe. What is essentially happening is we're looking to see that you have managed to upload at least 90% of all the procedures that have been done within the last 3 months when you upload them to NICOR. You can see that you can pick a date interval, you can group it by time, here it's grouped by month, and then at the bottom you see each line is a different month. So the top is April 2020, then May 2020, and you can see my compliance level, 100%, 32 out of 32 or 83 out of 83, and it's compared with the national compliance level, which is about 50%. We're trying to push this up. We'd like to encourage everyone to upload their data as contemporaneously as possible, and this will allow you to see how you're doing. If you upload your data in a timely fashion, that's great, but we obviously want it to be as complete as possible. We don't want empty fields. And this is where the data completeness tool comes in, and you will see along the top in blue the data completeness tab. If you click on that, it brings up this menu. Here you can pick the audit and pick a date interval, And here I've picked the PCI audit and a date interval which happens to be the 1st of April 2020 to the end of March 2021, which happens to be a recent audit period. And below you see on the left a list of every single field in the data set, and on the right by month how complete each of those data set fields are. And at the top we have the NHS number, which is the only one out of alphabetical order. All the rest are in alphabetical order, and that's because NHS number is very important and we need it in order to do mortality tracking and look for outlier analysis. If you click on any one of these columns, the columns will auto sort. So this whole chart that you see is interactive. And if you click on a column like this, it will auto sort it to the smallest at the top, biggest at the bottom. If you click it again, it flips it the other way around. So now you can see that I brought all the bad stuff to the top. But what you will also notice is the things that have very poor data completeness, 5%, let's say, here, are on the third operator during a PCI. Now, there often aren't 3 operators. In fact, there are very rarely 3 operators. So actually, having missing data in that field is completely fine. There's nothing to be concerned about. But you can see that my level of compliance with completeness of cholesterol, for example, is not very good. Now, let's just look at this chart in a bit more detail. And here I've showing you a box where I've only got 94% of the smoking status of patients entered during that month. Now, this is entirely interactive. So if I click on that box, it opens up the 5 cases with missing data in that box. And you can see those 5 cases there. I've blanked out, obviously, the names and identifiers of those patients for anonymity purposes. Now, again, this is interactive. If you are uploading your data from your own bespoke database entry tool, then what you need to do is open that tool up, find those procedures and enter the missing data. If you're using the NICOR tool, however, and you therefore, so this is the first option, and you therefore all you need to do is click on that line and it will automatically bring you to that patient's data. And you can see here that smoking status for that patient, it says unknown. It can be updated with the correct data and the data completeness improves. So we really hope that that tool will allow you to see where there are gaps, where to focus on, where to find missing bits of data to try and improve your data completeness. So now, having got good data in, you want to have a look at the data and analyze it. And there are a number of really interesting tools that we've programmed to try and help you see what your data look like. In order to understand this, however, you need to understand the structure of the data set, because essentially what the tool is doing is analyzing the data fields versus the values in those fields. And you can get to the PCI dataset and indeed all the datasets through the NICOR website as shown here. And I've opened up the PCI dataset and you can see PCI dataset standard 565 is the current version. And when you open that and download it, you'll see it takes the form of an Excel spreadsheet. And this is the appearance of that. You can see, for example, in the middle, I'm not sure if my pointer shows, the indication for intervention is field number 2.02, and the options for that are, for example, stable angina, acute coronary syndrome, primary PCI for STEMI. Lower down, for example, at the bottom, you can see cardiogenic shock. That's field 2.04, and the answers to that are either yes or no. I'll come back to that in a moment. The analytical tools are really split into 2 forms. The first is a bunch of pre-programmed tools which you can select from a list, and the other are ones that you can program. If we first start with a list, you can see this is the current list for PCI, but there's a different list for surgery, a different list for heart failure, and each of the audits will have their own lists, and these lists will grow as we add more to them. This is the PCI list, and let's focus, for example, on the door-to-balloon delay for primary PCI, the percentage of patients treated within 90 minutes, a very well-known standard. You can see that you can pick the date interval. I should say that below that, you can see the way in which that analysis has been defined. We can go through it. You can see which fields have been picked and what values are being used to make this analysis. You can take the date interval, you can group it by here month, and you can compare your hospital with the national aggregate and also the top 10 hospitals. And when you put in those parameters, what you find is that you compare your own hospital with a national average. You can see at the top, the Queen Elizabeth mean is about 96%, which is very good. And you can see month by month how that varies between 100% and 90%. If you compare that with the national, which runs at about 75%, the green wobbly line along the bottom, month by month, and then in brown, the wobbly line in the middle is the top 10 hospitals. The data points are all listed below. You see the top 3 lines, but of course it goes on, and you can download all those data and present them in any way you like. So this gives you access to your performance versus the national performance. But much more powerful than that is your ability to generate your own reports. So let's say someone comes up to you, as they did to me, and said, okay, I want to know what your in-hospital mortality is when you're treating patients electively, so stable elective patients, and you're treating their left main stem. What's the mortality of that group of patients, a subset of people that you're treating? How would you go about that? Well, this is the main screen for the user-generated reports, and you can see that it works by you entering numerator conditions and denominator conditions. The numerator is, if you like, the x, and the denominator the y, and you're going to end up with a percentage of x over y at your centre versus x over y in the national data. And there are a few key things you've got to look at. You need to have the numerator and the denominator being the subset of interest, in this case, for example, left main stem disease, and the only difference between the two must be what you want to measure. So it's what you want to measure in the subset of interest divided by the subset of interest. That's the first thing. And the second key point is that the PCI dataset, although it's called the PCI dataset, as many of you will know, contains two things. It does contain PCIs, but it also contains interventional diagnostic procedures, and they're defined as procedures where the number of lesions attempted is naught. In other words, all you've done is a pressure wire study or an intravascular ultrasound study. You haven't attempted a PCI. So those two key points are very important. Let's see how you would answer the question that we've already put out there. So the question is, what is the in-hospital mortality? And the subset of interest is PCI procedures treating the left main for elective cases. How would you do that? You need to look at the data set and translate it to those data set items. So you need to look at PCI outcome and see fields that contain the value death, which is a mortality. That's the thing you want to measure. And then you need to define a PCI, so you need to look at lesions attempted more than naught. You need to define the correct vessels, so you need to go vessels attempted field, it needs to contain left main stem. And you need to look at the clinical syndrome field and make sure it says stable. And if you program those things in, as shown here, you will end up, and I'll show you here, you will end up with, on the top, the question, which is in green, the PCI hospital outcome contains death, and then both on the top and the bottom, the the subset of patients that you want to look at. Now this looks quite complicated, but actually it's quite simple to do because these fields auto-complete. So when you want to try and pick a field, if you start going VESS, you'll find that vessels attempted becomes part of a very small drop down. Then you can pick the logical parameter, contains, greater than, more than. And on the far right, the only possible field values for the field you've picked are listed, so you can pick the correct one. Have a play with this device. It's actually much easier than it looks. But once you've set it up, you can then click Create Report, and here is that report. Now, if you look at the QE percentage in the table below, for example, in July 2019, we treated 4 of those sorts of patients, so they're not very common patients, none of them died. If you look on the right-hand side, let's say in June, you can see that UK-wide 151 such patients were treated, of whom 2 died, with a mortality of 1.32%. So I use this just as an example about how you can really begin to delve into the data set, look at your own outcomes or performance or anything you want to measure, and it will be compared automatically with the national averages. You can download all those data, and much more important, because it does take a while to set up, once you've done that, you can save your query as a favorite and you can go back to it anytime you like. So before I move on to the QI packs, I've tried to give you some idea of how you can not only make sure your data are uploaded in a timely fashion, but that the data completeness is good, and then ways in which you can look at the data that sit within the NICOR dataset. So now let me move on to the quality improvement packs. These packs are also available through this interface. Now, the idea of this is that it is a focus on how you improve the quality of care you give, not just measure it. And we took a lot of advice from incredibly helpful and well-informed colleagues at UCL partners, so Mike Roberts and his quality improvement team, Ben Bray and Ross Power, part of Power of Numbers. And they've helped us create quality improvement packs, which do two things. They show you how your centre is performing relative to the national, as you've seen before, but also provides you tools and methodology to try and help you as a team improve. So from this interface, you pick QI resources at the top. You can then see that you are able to select a pack. You can pick the financial year of that pack, and then you can click Create Pack. And when you do that, this is the first screen you see, which is a summary of this particular tool. So this particular pack is looking at how rapidly you treat emergency patients experiencing a myocardial infarction. So these are the door to balloon time measurements of how quickly you stop people having a heart attack. And what you can see there are two blue lines. The blue lines are how my hospital performs, and the red enclosing bar is the standard that we're looking for. So we want all patients to be treated within 90 minutes, and you see we fall slightly short of that. That's the left-hand bar, and on the right-hand side, you can see we want the door to balloon time to be less than 60 minutes in 75% of patients, and you can see we just about make that standard. Okay, so that's the summary of that pack, and then you click download the complete pack, and this is where it gets interesting, and this is what I'd encourage you to have a look at. So you will end up downloading a PDF which is customized to your hospital. You can see this is a PDF that is customized to my hospital. It starts explaining why the measurement is important, why it is important for patients having a heart attack to be treated quickly. It talks about the standards that have been set up, in this case by the British Cardiovascular Intervention Society and also by the European Society of Cardiology, with the two targets that we've talked about, how quickly patients should be treated and why we've picked those targets. It then gives you in more detail how you perform and how you perform relative to the targets. And then it puts you in the context of the whole of the nation. And you can see that your hospital is in green, and that's the vertical bar there. Red is the standard, and all the other vertical bars across here are all the other hospitals in the United Kingdom. And then, having set the scene, if you like, it then provides a number of methodological slides to try and help you use that information to try and improve the level of care, the standard of care you provide. So the suggested quality improvement methods are to identify potential areas where realistically you can make improvements in your environment. You decide on smart quality improvement aims that you want to achieve. You build a team to create a plan with clear responsibilities of what needs to be done. You have to engage with the stakeholders and then regularly meet to monitor your progress and plan next steps if necessary. So these are the specific, measurable, achievable and realistic time-bound goals that you try and set. And here's an example of a SMART objective, which is, for example, 80% of patients each month should have a primary PCI door to balloon time of less than 60 minutes, and we need to achieve it by March 2021. Do that. This is your aim, but in order to achieve that aim, you will need primary and then possibly secondary drivers. You need to achieve something that may need other things to be achieved. So this is another example. If we want to achieve this quick door to balloon time, then we need to make sure that patients are diagnosed with ST segment elevation as rapidly as possible after they get to the emergency department. How do we do that? We make sure, for example, that an ECG is done and interpreted within 10 minutes. So you can build up these patterns. This is only an example, and every team can build up their own patterns. And then you need to create a plan, do, study, and act cycle, a PDSA cycle. And this pack tries to give you some clues and tips about how you might do that. You need to engage with the appropriate stakeholders who may be of increasing power and of increasing interest. And then, having done that, you can use the tools to create run charts of how you are performing over time to see whether you're improving, getting worse or getting better. And then you can generate further plans to try and make things better still. So those are the quality improvement packs that have been generated, and the idea is that these packs will be generated for every single one of the quality improvement measures of every single one of the audit domains. Thank you.